Can you do me a favour? I know you're going to have questions on a multitude of issues. Why don't we sort Jack out first, give him the respect that I think he deserves right now, and we can move on to all of your other questions from there. I'm happy to answer them all today because this is the last time you'll see me for a bit.
Everyone all?
Yeah, everybody.
How did the announcement come about? Jack announcing to you that he was going to retire?
Yeah, so we obviously returned from Queensland earlier in the week. Jack asked for a catch up with both Ken and I. In fairness, we've been talking to Jack and his manager Paul Connors, who does a fantastic job with his players over the last period of time, and it became clear that Jack was ready to move on and look at what's next for his life. He'd battled through this year. We tried to remain as positive as we possibly could, for him and with him, but I think the physical and mental toll obviously took a toll, and he's made this decision now.
What were some of the emotions that he discussed with you guys, and the thought process of making sure that he played his last game?
Well, I think when you look at Jack's career, he hasn't spent 1 minute of that 12 years not under the spotlight, and when you've spent that amount of time with scrutiny on you, both some that he's obviously brought upon himself, but the majority of it came about because of where he was picked in the draft. There was a range of emotions. I'm sure he was feeling sadness at the fact that he'd finally got to a point where he realised that he was going to move on, but also a sense of relief that he knew that the time was right to move on, and he's left the club in a better spot than he found it.
And arguably his last two games played in defence, it's almost like what could have been, because he goes back and starts back in a position that he probably wasn't used to playing. Yeah,
well, as you say, Jack's last game at AFL level was almost best on ground material. He came to our club, and you guys only really get to see him as a player. Jack Watts is an amazing individual who has brought an enormous amount of energy and enthusiasm to our group at a time where we needed someone like that to actually bring that to us and bring the group up. He's been fantastic for our team, and as I say, make no mistake, he leaves our club in a far better place than what he found it, and our club right now is indebted to Jack for making a selfless decision right now, but also for the work that he's put in over the last 3 years with us.
Chris, he obviously had 1 year to run, so he comes to obviously an agreement that he's workable for the club and for Jack, obviously.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, these situations, because we've been talking about them for a period of time, we've manufactured an end here that will also help him out as well as the club. So, the reality is that in these situations, what you don't need is a player who is just going through the motions. If he knows he's out, he's out. We're all better off for the experience, and Jack can leave, under his terms with a year to go, so he knows that he is leaving under his terms. And as I say, he's a good guy who deserves the accolades that he's going to get from this. There you go, mate.
Where's he at physically at the moment? Was he close to playing at all this year?
No, look, I mean, at various points he got to close to what we would suggest was a level of fitness that may have allowed him to play. But the reality is that the physical toll that even getting to that point took, and also the mental toll, was significant. So, I just think that having gone through a similar situation myself with my own sporting career, which wasn't nearly the equal of what Jack's was, that you do get to a point where you just know it's the right time, and if you can't push anymore, it's time to move on. And as I say, Jack's done a fantastic thing for both himself and the club here in making what is a selfless decision to move on, because you do see a lot of players who are willing to just go through the motions in their last year in order to collect a paycheck. That's not Jack Watts. It never has been, and we should commend him for that.
Was he okay about it? Was he emotional or pretty?
No, he was emotional. I mean, we all were. Ken, myself, and he. I remember the day that he came to our club when we were trying to woo him over in the first place. I mean, we're now talking about cycles for me of players, entire careers at Port Adelaide. So of course there's, emotion as part of it, but we all knew it was the right call. As I say, we'd spoken about it for long enough this year to know that, Jack is leaving the club in a better place, and that's really all we can all ask.
How do you think his career will be remembered?
Well, the guy's played over 170 games of AFL footy at 2 clubs. People will make of it what they will. He was a supremely talented player who read the game amazingly well. What was abundantly clear for us was that not only did he read the game well, but he was a fantastic teammate to have around our group. Unfortunately, his career now was cut short, through injury and probably a want to push through. But Jack was an outstanding player. You don't play 170 odd AFL games by chance. He fought through adversity on a number of occasions. His last game at the level was probably his best one for us. And as I say, he leaves the club in a more broader sense in a better place.
What happens to him now in terms of the bubble? Is he able to leave the bubble immediately?
Yeah, so I mean, they're all the things that we work out from here. But Jack cleaned his stuff out on Tuesday, so the reality will be that he won't be training through the finals period. And as the release said today, he's done as of now.
And what about in terms of other cuts or other risk management decisions? How many others are you expecting?
Well, we've got a final series now to focus on, and we made our delistings last week. Obviously, we told you about those. We won't be making any other changes now until the end of the season, which for us, fortunately, is still a fair way away.
Chris, has he had a chance to talk to the players, and how was that experience?
Yeah, look, he hasn't had a chance to get in front of them as a group, but I know that he's spoken to them individually. So that's the unfortunate part of we come back from Queensland and we've got a couple of days off, as you guys have seen. So he hasn't been able to do it personally, but I'm sure there'll come a time where Jack will get back in front of them and be able to talk through the emotions of the time. But I know that, as I say, he's spoken to them. He's texted a lot of the guys, and they're all aware of where he was at by the time that we released it earlier on today.
Chris, can you give us some clarification on which families were given exemptions to come here to SA?
Well, I can tell you who is here. The Byrne-Jones family, I think Chicky Boak and Tom Rockcliffe's mum and dad. I couldn't tell you the list of who it was that received the exemptions and or who applied, but those are the groups that managed to get through yesterday.
What sort of how much did Port Adelaide know about the situation as it was unfolding and them applying for these exemptions?
We knew that they were applying for the exemptions. As anyone who is a parent would know, my daughter only has to show me her report card for me to want to put my arms around her. As a parent, I imagine that having not seen your son or daughter in a different situation for a long period of time, you would want to go through the process of asking when you're coming into the biggest part of the season. The guys, the parents asked the question and they were given an answer. I don't think that anyone in this should suggest that the players' parents have done anything wrong. The players certainly haven't done anything wrong, nor has the club. The question was asked. The parents got an answer, and they complied with that. There was a group who managed to get into South Australia yesterday. There's a group who now have had their exemption rescinded. As I say, that's the way that SA Health have dealt with it.
There's a bit of blowback, obviously, from the public or whatever. Is it a book, or do you understand people's perhaps perception of it? Nicholas Brewer said it was a mistake, for example.
If the Chief Health Officer says it's a mistake, I'm more than happy to defer to the fact that it was a mistake. But let's be clear, our people followed the right process, which is asking SA Health for an exemption. They received an answer, they complied with that, and the situation has unfolded since then. But I don't think that you can criticise the parents for wanting to be here to watch the finals. Now, the broader sense of what that means is something that SA Health are going to have to deal with. There's nothing for the Port Adelaide Footy Club or the parents involved to deal with any further than to say they went through the right process in order to get an exemption request in front of SA Health.
Was there talks about family exemptions when discussions were had about having finals here in SA?
Well, the club put something to both the AFL and AFLPA to say, is there going to be some form of transition hub as they'd set up in Queensland for the teams who are going to be in the finals, for the families of the teams who are going to be in the finals, and the response back to me in regard to that was no. So, obviously on that case, the AFL weren't going to organise a group of or that transition hub. So on that basis, the group of parents decided to apply just as every other citizen who wanted to come into South Australia would.
Have you spoken to the players involved, and what have they said about the situation?
Look, I haven't spoken to all of them, no. The ones that I have spoken to have suggested that they're happy that their parents are here, first and foremostly, because most of them haven't seen them for a long period of time, but they, at the same time, are also not wanting to bring any undue media attention onto the club or the people involved.
You said the club knew about applying for the exemptions. How did the club actually find that out in the first place?
Well, we talked to the players' parents. I mean, I don't. There's nothing to hide there. I mean, our players' parents are a group who we take great care of. We're one of the few clubs who invites and pays for our players' parents to come over at various points during the year in order for them to make sure that they feel like they're part of our club. We take an absolute family approach in that sense, and we have a good relationship with the parents of our players. At the end of the day, we know that if our players' families are happy, that generally speaking, our players will be happy. We've had great success over time in retaining our players who are from Melbourne, and in this situation, it was clear that the guys were going to ask for that exemption through the right channels, which is to SA Health. And SA Health made the decision.
Are they planning to be here for the rest of the campaign? Family that are here?
Look, I imagine so. I haven't asked them how long they're going to be staying for, but I can't imagine they would have gone through the trouble to come here and then go after a day.
Is there, some people have criticised Tafa, given she had a previous role here at the club. Do you think there's perhaps a perceived conflict of interest, or that's nothing to do with the footy club?
Well, it's nothing to do with the footy club. And I think in fairness to her Taff, I don't think she made the decision.
So she doesn't deserve any criticism, you?
Oh, look, I mean, what happens is happening right now. At the end of the day, let's be really clear. SA Health were the ones who received the exemption request, and SA Health were the ones who made the decision on the exemption. Whether the players' parents got that or not was not a matter for the football club, certainly. And so, at the end of the day, I think that's a decision and a discussion that will continue to be had, but it needs to be had with the right authority, and I'm not that, Tom. So.
Last couple of guys, bit more.
I'm just going to change tack completely.
Go.
Brad Crouch was on radio last night. He said, welcome an offer from Port Adelaide Football Club. What do you say to that?
Well, I didn't hear that.
He said he'd be open to it. He's
right.
with his contract.
Yeah, well, look, let's ask all these trade questions right now because, as I say, you're not going to get me for a little bit. So your last couple noughts might be more than that. Look, we have an interest in where players are going to go at this time of year. I've said it before. Knowledge is power at this particular point in time, and knowing where players are going to end up across the competition becomes a competitive advantage when deals are there to be done. Right now, I think that you need to understand we have a finals campaign which we are totally invested in. If you need information on trades, you're probably better off asking the Crows right now in regard to what their views are. We've got bigger fish to fry, and that is the upcoming finals campaign.
Do you think he'd be a good acquisition, mate?
I think Brad Crouch is a best and fairest winner at his club. Whoever gets him, if it's not Adelaide, I mean, let's put that on the table that he may very well stay there still. Whoever he ends up at is going to get a good player, just as we have traded players in previously, and there'll be other players who move across the competition for the remainder of the year who will be good players who will have, as I say, an interest in where they're going to end up. But to suggest that we have interest in X or Y player right now, when we've got 4 weeks of finals ahead of us, is probably a stretch.
The only other one I want to ask about is Ollie Wines. He's got an important month coming up, as you said, at the football club. Where do you see his future lie?
Well, as it was when we signed him a couple of years ago to a long-term deal, it's at Port Adelaide. The idea that Ollie is going to be contemplating leaving right now is just so contrary to everything that he has said publicly in the last period of time. So I'm taking very much on face value that Ollie Wines wants to stay with this group. I think his last comments to the media were that the club has set up the list extremely well for the next 5 to 10 years, and he wants to be part of that success. So, I understand why people's names continue to come up because it drives eyeballs and all those types of things. But that's just not one that we're contemplating right now. Nothing on Fantasia. I mean, as I say, let's get it out there. Right. Okay. So the latest. I've never spoken more about a guy who I've never actually spoken to in my life. So, with respect to this across the board, Orazio is an Essendon football player, and until he suggests that that's different, Port Adelaide won't be talking any more about Orazio Fantasia, whether he's got a golf membership wherever, whether he's got a local DVD store, if those still exist. Let's just put it on the table that we have an interest in every good South Australian player who wants to come home, but until those players tell us that they want to come home, I'm done talking about those prospective people whilst we've got a really important 4 weeks to come and a finals campaign. As I say, you're better off asking the Crows about those types of things right now.
You've got a pretty good forward line, but Ben Brown?
Yeah, well, how does he fit with Charlie, Todd, Peter Laddams and Mitch Georgiadis? If you can fit him in, Tom.
No, I think, nah.
Right.
Pretty sorted.
There we are.